Okay, so check this out, right? I was just buying my morning coffee, and get this, I paid for it with my phone.
Yeah, like, didn't even touch cash. It was one of those moments that got me thinking, we use money for literally everything.
Yeah, it's true.
But when was the last time we actually stopped and thought about where the whole concept of money even came from?
Right.
Which, speaking of, is a perfect intro to today's deep dive,
Yeah.
cryptocurrency.
Because, as it turns out, it's really just the latest chapter in this crazy long history of how we decide what stuff is worth.
Absolutely. Money's taken some wild, wild turns over the years.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, think about it. Before we had Bitcoin, before we had dollar bills, before we even had gold coins,
Yeah.
we had bartering.
Bartering, right.
You've got chickens, I've got wheat.
Simple.
Let's make a deal.
Yeah. But the thing is, it wasn't always that simple. What if you don't need any more chickens?
Okay, yeah.
What if I've got a bumper crop of wheat, but your prize hen, it's just not that valuable to you? What then? See? Bartering gets complicated pretty quickly, and that's where those early forms of currency came in.
So we're talking like, instead of hauling a live chicken to the market, someone's like, hey, let's just use these seashells as money.
Exactly. And people went for it. But here's the thing. What made these early currencies, whether it was seashells, gold, whatever, what made them catch on, it all boils down to a few key things. They were relatively scarce, they were durable, and you could divide them into smaller units.
Okay.
All way more practical than trying to lug around a flock of chickens to the market, right?
Yeah. A lot easier to stick a few seashells in your pocket.
Yeah.
But how did we go from like literal shiny rocks and stuff to the dollar bills or, the digital versions of them I've got on my phone now?
Trust. That's the missing link.
Okay.
So back in the day, people would deposit their gold with goldsmiths, right, for safekeeping.
Makes sense.
And they'd get receipts in return. And get this, those receipts, they eventually became a kind of early paper money.
Ooh, early Bitcoin vibes.
Right. People trusted that the receipt represented actual gold, safe and sound somewhere.
Right.
And over time, this whole system, it evolved into something we know as the gold standard.
The gold standard.
Where paper money was directly linked to a specific amount of gold. And for a while, it worked. It brought stability to the game, especially for international trade.
Right, because everyone knew what their money was actually worth.
Exactly. You had that backing, so why ditch it? What went wrong with the gold standard?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't perfect. Some argued that it was too rigid, that it made it difficult for governments to respond effectively to economic crises. And eventually, most countries, they decided to shift to what we use now, fiat currency.
Fiat currency. So for those of us who aren't economists,
What exactly does that mean?
basically it's money that's backed by, well, the governments say so, not by a physical commodity like gold.
Okay.
Think of it this way. The government says, this paper, it's worth something.
Right.
We say so.
Just trust us.
Exactly. And we all agree to play along because, well, what other choice do we have?
Right.
But that brings us to the Austrian School of Economics.
Which the source material mentions. And they're not exactly doing a victory lap for fiat currency, are they?
Not really, no. They've got some major concerns.
Yeah.
The big one, this idea that once you decouple money from something tangible, something real like gold, you give governments way too much power.
Yeah.
And that's where things like inflation rear their ugly heads.
It's funny because that's exactly the kind of anxiety a lot of people are feeling right now. I mean, look around. Inflation is eating away at our savings. The stock market's doing its own crazy dance. It's like people are starting to lose faith in the very systems that are supposed to be keeping our money safe.
It's true. And that, my friend, is the perfect breeding ground for something like Bitcoin to emerge. Because it's not just a technology, is it? It's a reaction.
A reaction.
To this very real, very visceral feeling that maybe, just maybe, the financial system as it is, well, it's not really working for the little guy. And then, boom, 2008 hits.
2008.
Financial crisis.
Talk about a turning point.
Right. I mean, it exposed just how vulnerable those big centralized institutions really are. And suddenly, people are craving something different, something more transparent, more accountable. And guess what?
What?
Bitcoin was ready to answer that call.
So it's like, picture this, right? It's 2008. The world is still kind of reeling from that whole financial meltdown we were just talking about. And then, bam, out of nowhere, Bitcoin explodes onto the scene.
It really did feel like this radical, defiant experiment.
Right? A total middle finger to the establishment. We're talking revolution.
Absolutely. And it all starts with this mysterious figure, this Satoshi Nakamoto.
Satoshi Nakamoto. It's like a name straight out of a cyberpunk novel.
Right. This shadowy figure emerges from the digital mist, drops this bombshell on the world, and then poof, vanishes without a trace.
Talk about an entrance. But okay, Bitcoin, 2008. We've got the backstory. But what is it about this thing that's so different? What makes it tick?
That's where the real magic comes in. Blockchain technology.
That would change.
Yeah, so try to imagine this, right? You've got this massive digital ledger, okay? But it's not just sitting in one place. Instead, it's spread across this entire network of computers all over the world. And every single Bitcoin transaction, every single one ever made, is recorded on this ledger.
Wow, so there's no, like, hidden shady stuff. It's all out in the open.
Exactly. It's totally transparent, like a public record that's constantly being verified and updated in real time.
And that's part of what makes Bitcoin so secure.
Exactly. It's virtually impossible to tamper with because with so many copies of the ledger out there, you'd have to hack into like a ridiculous number of computers simultaneously to change anything.
Okay, so that's blockchain.
Yeah.
And then there's that other word everyone throws around, decentralization, meaning like there's no central bank, no government calling the shots.
Exactly. And that is a huge deal.
I bet.
Because it means there's no single point of failure. No one can just shut it down or manipulate it to serve their own interests.
Right.
Bitcoin puts the control back in the hands of individuals.
It's like the Wild West of finance, but instead of outlaws and sheriffs, it's lines of code and cryptography.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Because it really is a new frontier in a lot of ways.
But even in the Wild West, there are still rules, right? Like with Bitcoin, unlike regular currencies, the government can't just print more whenever they feel like it.
You're right. That's a key difference. Bitcoin is designed to be scarce.
Scarce.
There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in existence.
Wow, that's it.
That's it. And the way they're released into circulation is actually fascinating.
Yeah, that's where those halving events everyone's always talking about come in, right?
Exactly. So think of it this way. Every 4 years, the reward that Bitcoin miners get for verifying transactions, which is how new Bitcoins are created, by the way, that reward gets cut in half. It's a built-in control mechanism. It gradually makes Bitcoin more and more scarce over time.
Okay, and this is all part of the plan. Like, it was designed to work this way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of people believe this is one of the key reasons why Bitcoin's value could continue to increase over the long term.
So it's like, kind of, a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
The more scarce it becomes.
The more valuable it potentially becomes.
Exactly, which is probably why so many people treat it like an investment.
Absolutely. Bitcoin's both a revolutionary technology and a speculative asset.
Right, right. You got people drawn to the ideals, the potential to like really shake things up. And then you've got the others who mostly see those dollar signs.
You got it. And to really understand Bitcoin, you've got to understand both sides of that coin.
See what you did there?
Both sides of that coin. Okay, I see you. But speaking of different sides, the crypto world goes way beyond Bitcoin, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin may have been the first, but it definitely didn't stop there.
Yeah.
The whole universe of options out there.
So we've explored Bitcoin, this whole like chaotic but captivating origin story of how it all began.
But this deep dive, it wouldn't be complete without, venturing further into the crypto cosmos.
There's a big universe out there.
Right, because it's like
Yeah,
Bitcoin, it kind of opened this door to a whole universe of possibilities. And now we've got all these other cryptocurrencies and tokens popping up left and right.
It's true. The crypto landscape is incredibly diverse. And you're right to point out that distinction. Cryptocurrencies versus tokens.
Yeah, yeah.
They often get used interchangeably, but
But there is a difference.
there is a key difference.
Okay.
So think of it this way. Cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin, they have their own independent blockchains. They're like the stars of their own show.
Gotcha.
Tokens, on the other hand, are built on top of existing blockchains, like Ethereum, for example. They're more like supporting characters,
Okay.
but they still play important roles within those ecosystems.
Okay, so Bitcoin's the big star, its own set.
Yeah.
And then tokens are like the guest stars that show up from time to time and sometimes make things really interesting.
Exactly. And just like in Hollywood, sometimes those guest stars, they go on to become major players in their own right.
They do, yeah. Okay, so give me some names. What are some of the other, like, big hitters in this crypto universe we should know about?
Well, we've got to talk about Ethereum.
Ethereum.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just a currency, it's a platform. You can build decentralized applications on it, dApps, as they're called,
Apps, okay.
which are powered by these things called smart contracts.
Okay, see, now smart contracts always sounded kind of like super futuristic to me. What are they?
So basically, they're like self-executing contracts written in code and stored on the blockchain.
Hmm.
Imagine a vending machine, but for agreements.
Okay.
You put in your input, the conditions are met, boom, contract executes automatically. No middlemen needed.
So instead of like lawyers and tons of paperwork, we've got code doing all the heavy lifting.
You got it. It's
Yeah.
all about automation and trust.
Mm.
And the source material gives this perfect example. So, like, imagine you buy a plane ticket,
Okay.
but it's linked to a smart contract.
Okay.
If your flight gets delayed, the contract automatically pays you compensation.
Wow.
No more battling with the airline, no waiting for refunds. It just happens.
That would make air travel at least like 10% less soul-crushing.
Right.
Sign me up for that. But let's be real. Even with all these mind-blowing innovations, all this like potential, the crypto world, it still has its fair share of, well, chaos.
Absolutely. It's still a young market.
It is, yeah.
And with that comes volatility, which is where stablecoins come in.
Stablecoins,
Yeah.
the more level-headed cousins of the crypto family.
There you go. See, you get it.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is to offer the stability of traditional currencies, but with all the benefits of blockchain technology.
So like a safe haven in this wild world of crypto.
You could say that, but it's not quite that simple because there are different types of stablecoins,
Okay.
each with its own pros and cons. Some of them are pegged to existing fiat currencies, like the US dollar.
Okay, so their value is kind of more stable because it's tied to something that's already, relatively stable?
Exactly. Others are backed by other cryptocurrencies or use algorithms to maintain their stability. And that's where things can get a little dicier.
Right. And the source material did mention some controversy swirling around stablecoins, right?
Yeah, because there have been concerns about transparency, especially with the largest stablecoin, Tether. Some people question whether it actually has enough reserves to back its value. And then there's that whole saga of algorithmic stablecoins.
Which haven't fared so well.
Yeah. Let's just say not all of them have lived up to their name.
Right, right. Which I guess is a good reminder that, as with anything in the crypto world, there are always risks involved. And we can't forget about, like, the meme coins of it all.
Oh, the meme coins.
Like Dogecoin, they're like the court jesters of this whole universe.
It's true. They bring some much-needed humor to the space.
They do. But you're right. The crypto space is also, it's rife with projects driven more by hype than by any real substance.
That's why it's crucial to do your homework before investing in anything.
Absolutely. Don't just jump on whatever's trending on Twitter that day.
Exactly.
Which I think brings us to the all-important question of risk, right? Because, let's face it, crypto, it can be a bit of a roller coaster ride. And the source material, it doesn't shy away from that, and neither should we. So, what are some of the biggest risks that people should be aware of before they, dive headfirst into this world?
Well, the first thing to remember is that crypto is still a relatively new and largely unregulated asset class.
Right.
It really is like venturing into uncharted territory.
Yeah.
But the source material, it breaks the risks down into three main categories. First up, you've got your standard investment risks.
Okay.
Volatility, market manipulation, that kind of thing.
The usual suspect.
Exactly. Then there are the technological risks.
Yeah.
Hacks, scams, losing access to your digital wallet. Those are all very real concerns.
It's like the Wild West out there, but instead of bandits, we've got hackers.
Pretty much. And then finally, you've got the legal risks.
Ah, yes. The law. Always playing catch up.
Exactly. Because the regulatory landscape for crypto, it's still constantly evolving.
It's like trying to hit a moving target. So how can our listeners, how can they navigate this crypto landscape, this Wild West of finance, without losing their shirts in the process? The source material had some good tips on, how to become a more savvy investor, right?
Absolutely. And it all starts with knowledge.
Of course.
You want to dive into the nitty-gritty. You can learn about fundamental analysis.
Fundamental analysis.
That's where you look beyond the hype and assess a project's true value. The team behind it, the technology, the roadmap, all of it.
So not just jumping on whatever's trending on Twitter that day.
Exactly. Though keeping an eye on market sentiment, yeah, that can be helpful.
It's good to know what the buzz is.
It is. But, not everyone wants to be that hands-on.
Right.
And the source material also talks about more passive investment strategies like dollar cost averaging, for example.
Okay, dollar cost averaging. Break that down for me.
Oh, it's beautifully simple. Basically, you invest a fixed amount, right, at regular intervals. regardless of the price.
Okay.
It's a really great way to ride out those price swings without, making emotional decisions.
So instead of freaking out every time the market dips, you're playing the long game.
Exactly. And it's a strategy that has shown real results. The source material even includes this compelling example of how well dollar-cost averaging would have worked for Bitcoin over, the past 5 years.
Well, there you have it, folks. Proof that sometimes slow and steady wins the crypto race. But even with the best strategies, it's important to remember that this world, it never stands still, right?
Never.
New technologies are always emerging.
Always.
New projects, new challenges.
It's true.
It's this ongoing journey of discovery. That's what makes it so exciting.
I couldn't agree more. Well, there you have it. That's our deep dive into the world of cryptocurrency.
I feel like I need to take a deep breath after all that, and maybe buy some more coffee with my phone.
There you go.
But as always, we want to leave you with something to think about. Do you think crypto is the future of finance?
A path to greater financial freedom and innovation.
Or is it all just one giant speculative bubble waiting to burst?
The source material, it presented both sides of the argument, and it's something we encourage you to ponder as you continue to explore this fascinating new world.
And remember, knowledge is power, so please do your research, seek out those reliable sources, and never ever stop learning.
Words to live by. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.